liven things up around here. It's like 9:30. It's past my bedtime.
I know, I know, really.
Okay. So the process is that you have 3 minutes to provide an opening statement. We will begin with board member questions. After that, we will start with Member Pritchett on to my right, to your left, and then go on down to our student board member, Katrina Yee. After that, you will have 2 minutes in which to provide us a closing statement. Each board member will have 3 minutes with you to ask questions. Depending on how quickly you answer their questions, you will be asked more questions in that 3-minute time frame. So it's all dependent on you. Your 3 minutes for your opening statement will begin as soon as you say your first word.
Good evening, and first I'd like to congratulate the newest member of the board, Member Pritchett. I'm Gwen A. Bird. I'm the parent of 2 third graders in the district. I also own 2 small businesses. I'm not going to repeat what I've already written in my application. I trust you've taken the time to look at my application and read my thoughts on governance, the district budget, and the strategic plan. So I'd like you to do something for me. I'd like you to think about a business that you frequent. It could be a store or a restaurant. It could be a product you're loyal to, Honda, Starbucks, or Apple. Now think about why you buy their products or services. Why do you stand in line there when you could probably get another cup of coffee down the street or buy a different car or tablet for less? Is it because you feel welcome when you walk through the door? Is it because their products are reliable? They're quick to respond to a complaint? You know that you'll have a consistent experience every time you go there. What if parents felt that way about their neighborhood school and about our school district? Why are there some schools in our district where parents camp out overnight to get a spot and other schools that are under-enrolled? What are those schools that have wait lists to get in doing right? Why can't all of our schools be just as sought after? What if our district had a wait list for inter-district transfers? That's the vision I have for our district and all the schools in it. How do we get there? A few suggestions. Insist on all of our schools and the district office providing a welcoming environment for all of our customers, students, and parents, and for our employees. Establish processes and systems that ensure a quality, reliable, consistent product, graduates ready to succeed in the world. Establish clear lines of communication and expectations among all levels in the district, from parents to teachers to administration. Give all employees the tools they need to do their jobs and to maintain morale and loyalty. Optimize the use of our resources by being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And create strong relationships with all stakeholders in our community. This is my vision for our school district. I want it to be the district of choice for our parents and students and for our employees. I want our schools to be safe and welcoming, places that stimulate creativity and intellectual pursuits, places where budget priorities are established as a result of a collaborative effort with parents and teachers, where there's an agreement on the school's culture, and where parents and teachers work cooperatively to implement the agreed-upon goals. Places that are considered partners with business and other government offices in the community. Places where people aren't just biding time because they have to be there, they want to be there. This is my vision for our schools and for our district. I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. With that, we will go with our first question coming from Member Pritchett.
Thank you for being here tonight. My thing is community engagement, and I'd like to know what types of community engagement you've done in your area this far in recent years. And a second follow-up to that is, if selected for this position, how will you take the experience that you've had and implement it to the board level?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been involved in many different types of community activities in the last 20 years that I've lived in this community. I've been an avid volunteer in the schools, actually, and have been very active in, this is before being a parent, making sure that there were avenues for those who weren't as fortunate to be able to avail themselves of the opportunities that I had to be able to access different resources in the community. I've served on many different, the Neighborhood Accountability Board, for example, which is a board which helps divert first-time juvenile offenders away from the criminal justice system and holds them accountable for their first-time offense, but doesn't allow them to get probation, a record, so that we've diverted children out of that system. Because I felt strongly that there's a lot of kids who just need a little bit of guidance and a little bit of hand-holding and accountability. In terms of how that I would apply relating, and that's just one example, and I'm mindful of the time. But in terms of how would I engage the community and with respect to the board, I feel really strongly about wanting to make sure that what we're doing is aligned with what other community interests in our area who serve the same stakeholders, the kids and their parents, and making sure, and so establishing relationships with other entities that serve the same population that we do, whether it's limited English proficient, whether it's special ed needs, Title I kids, whatever other services in our community are engaging with those same kids. I want to work collaboratively together to make sure that they have a full experience.
Great, thank you. If this position ended up going into a special election, would you find yourself running as a candidate in that election?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Arroyo.
Thank you for indulging us here. And number one, the question is, what do you think is the role of the board member or a board member?
Okay, and I just had one quick thought. I just did want to add that I did run for this job in 1996, just to add to the history in terms of running. Sorry. So the role of a board member, that's to set the vision of for the district. You've come up with your strategic plan. You've done the work of setting forth what you want to accomplish in the future. Then it's also to manage and hold accountable those who are responsible for implementing the vision. It's not to micromanage and be, in there doing the details, which is something that, as a parent, I'm used to wanting to kind of get involved and directly get in there, and if there's a problem, I want to fix it. And so I'm mindful that I need to wear a different hat as a board member because that's not what it's about. So for me, anyway, it's setting the vision. It's also being open to having a plan for how to change that up if you realize that the way that things you envision them to be aren't playing out the way you expected it. So there needs to be a process in place for being able to change that up. The board then also holds accountable those who are charged with implementing the vision and, asks a lot of questions and make sure that they know how things are going. And also, I think, truly visioning out in the future and seeing, looking at what do you want this district to be about, not just being in crisis mode.
Okay. And then what do you think are the biggest challenges facing the district? And you can be as specific as you can be.
How long do I have?
I mean, if you can point them out.
Yeah, I think probably, the elephant in the room, the budget. There's, finances are always an issue with school districts, and of course the way that school districts are funded is just crazy complex, and there's not a lot you can do about it. I mean, there's so many things where your hands are tied, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to make decisions. But I do think that there needs to be, and I know this board has done a fabulous job at trying to work with the limited amounts that they do have. My approach would just simply be to bring yet another pair of eyes to say, okay, I would kind of look at it as a blank slate and say, if we could start over, where should we be allocating our dollars? I know there's some issues with inequities amongst schools, and I'm not quite sure why that's the case. I know the principal at our school isn't even quite sure how that plays out, despite the fact that it should be clear as to how dollars are allocated. So I would kind of want to look at that and see, are we making decisions just because that's always been the way it has, and we're just building on bad decisions, or should we be revisiting and determining where we start from square one?
Okay. And then what is your perspective or your view on the governance model that we have in the district?
Oh, I think it's excellent. I think it could maybe use some refinement in terms of how it's playing out.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Vice President Cunha.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on teacher evaluations, and do you believe that test scores should be part of those evaluations?
Teacher evaluations. I think that teachers need all the support they can get in terms of peer review and coaching, and I think we need to give them the tools to do their job. I think specifically being evaluated, the evaluations should be more of a holistic process. I think test scores only give you so much information, and if they're going to be used, they need to be used in the context of the situation that of noticing the student population they're working with, noticing the constraints that they have with respect to what the state responsibilities are and the school district requirements are. So they can be looked at as long as they're looked at fairly in the context of how this teacher's doing. But I think that they need to be broader. It shouldn't just be based on the numbers. I think, ideally, wouldn't it be great to have, IEPs for every child, not just special needs ones, so that we know we can track and see where they headed from point A to point B and how did they get there. I'm a fan of telling teachers, this is where we want you to go, and you get there however is legally and morally acceptable. Be creative, and not micromanaging how they get there.
If you were on this board in regard to a school closure process, do you believe that academic achievement levels at schools should be one factor in the consideration of closing schools?
I think that it can be a factor. I think the idea of looking at why schools need to be closed, if it's due to declining population, if it's as a budget matter, if it's academic achievement, I think all those things need to be considered as to asking the question of why are we considering closing the school. So yes, I think it should be a factor.
What do you view the board member's role in raising academic achievement levels throughout the district?
Setting the standards for what we expect.
Do you believe in setting hard target numbers?
I'm not sure how else you would do it. I mean, you have to use something that shows that there has to be some clear expectations and measurement standards, and so I'm not sure I would know what else to do besides numbers, which is sort of an unfortunate measure, isn't it? Because I'd really make it, yeah, so let me stop there.
No, you can continue.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of processing it as we're talking. Just the idea of, I think numbers don't always tell the whole picture. But you still have to have very clear measurable standards, or else you don't know if you're succeeding in what you've asked everybody to do. I mean, you can say we expect this, but if you're off track and you're not sure why. So it's kind of part of a bigger picture for me.
Yes or no, were you disappointed that the district did not obtain Race to the Top monies? Or was not able to put in enough?
Yes.
You. My turn. Your application, I have a few more
I'm sorry, can't
questions.
hear you.
I said with your application materials, I had a few more questions
Okay.
for you, just based off of what your responses were. One of the things is I was curious about your run in 1996 and how you describe the reasons why you ran.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought to me a curiosity of how would you bring thoughtful decision-making to a board, as a whole, especially with dealing with personality conflicts?
Mm-hmm. Well, it probably requires even more thoughtfulness. Being the idea of being an active listener and really understanding where people are coming from is important to me, and not just jumping to conclusions and making rash decisions. So how do I bring that to the board? It's about in understanding where people are coming from, understanding the views that they have, the context in which they're making that, who the constituencies are, and having a better picture of that before it's something that's just, thrown out there and you make a rash decision. I'm not sure, is that responsive to what you're asking?
Your response. As a board member and as a parent in a district, and from what I gather, you have a fourth grader?
I have 2 third graders.
2 third graders? Oh, you
Yeah.
have twins.
I do have twins.
Okay. And so one of the things that changes is as soon as you become a board member, your school all of a sudden becomes, they're a board member now. They're walking onto campus. They're going to go over and beyond for the service of your children. How would you manage that and ensure that everyone at the school campus is getting the equitable treatment that they should get, not just your own children?
Well, in fact, my children don't attend a school in the area which I would be representing, so that's, as it is, already a separation. But, I've always been able to sort of diplomatically manage and tell people, I'm happy to have input, And I would have to be very clear about it. Right now I'm wearing my parent hat, now I'm wearing my board hat in terms of interacting with things, because I'd still want to be active as a parent, and that's something I'd have to work through in terms of making sure that people were very clear about when I was wearing which hat. But, you know, always open to input regardless of which area I'm representing. It's not just about people in Area 1.
How would you ensure you keep in touch with what's going on at the school campuses if your children are not in the district?
Oh, well, as a board member, I would be out at events related, you know, that are related to Area 1. I would like to see, you know, using social media in a much more effective way in terms of keeping in touch with people who are in Area 1. I mean, maybe there's an Area 1, you know, I've set up 2 Facebook fan pages for my businesses. I can do the same just in terms of making sure that there's a sharing of information. To me, that's a very effective means of people being able to contribute on a regular basis.
Thank you. Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Rodriguez, and thank you, Ms. Bird, for coming in this evening. So, can you share with us, we go through about a $400 million budget, and we're going to be starting that shortly. Share with us what your budget experience is.
Well, I was chief consultant to the Senate Majority Leader in the legislature, and he chaired one of the budget subcommittees of the legislature. So a large part of my job was evaluating what was coming through the committee to understand what the budget requests were, understanding the background, and assisting in making choices about allocations. In addition, I've served on the board of our children's preschool, where we had to confront making budget issues related just to that school. In terms of, well, in fact, we went through a process of hiring a new director for the school, and that was the talk about collaborative effort. And so understanding even just the minutiae of detail related to how much it costs to run a preschool and the differences in cost between infants and older kids, whatever. So those are probably 2 most relevant things that I would speak to.
And what would be your budget priorities?
I think the first priority would be addressing the inequities that I'm aware of with among the schools, because I know that all schools get their standard ADA. I know that they all get funding based on Title I or other categorical and different types of needs, but there still seems to be some bottom line as applied. We're following the rules about how the money is allocated, but as applied, it seems like there's some inequity. So looking at that, I think, is a huge one. Making sure that monies that have been elected on by the voters, GO bonds, are being appropriately allocated according to voter intent. I think that's an important one. And again, looking at why some things are done the way they are. Has it always been this way, or is it something that we need to start over and look at a blank slate?
You talked about earlier about the whether or not achievement should be a consideration in school closures. What else do you think would be important factors in determining school closures, given that we may have to be faced with that in right-sizing our school district? I
think it's helpful to look at demographics, to look at trends in neighborhoods, to look at, I think it's important not to just be immediately responsive in crisis mode, that we actually make our best guess with information related to what does that neighborhood look like. There's ebbs and flows of every neighborhood, and so closing it for this year, does that make a lot of sense with respect to, is it going to save any money? What's that going to do to the student population? What's it going to do to the employee population? How will that affect other schools? And I think it needs to be part of a bigger plan.
Thank you. Member Kennedy.
You gave 2 one-word answers tonight, and that's almost enough for me to vote for you.
Give me another one. I'll give you.
The time commitment for a board member is important, and it's pretty set. But sometimes it varies. But we meet twice a month, 4:32 usually, 10 or 11. Yes. And then sometimes we're required to have special meetings in between. And then, of course, you'd be expected for other community and school visits. Do you have, in your professional life, are you able to make that commitment?
That's what I love about choosing my latest career. I was a lawyer for 16 plus years, and I chose to stop being a lawyer. I'm inactive.
You'll have to tell me how later.
And started my first business and then started a second one. But a big reason why I did that was for time flexibility, so I could be my own boss and schedule things when I wanted to, and schedule them around my kids. So, and I'm lucky to have a very supportive husband who supports me in some of these crazy things that I feel like I want to do, like come and be here till all hours of the night. So, yes.
You said in your questionnaire, you said it's important that the board maintain the public's trust by ensuring that those funds, Q&R, are used in a manner consistent with the voters' intent. How does the board do that?
Well, coming from my legislative background, it's always important to look at the words that are written in the law that has been either been proposed or in this case been enacted. And so I always go back to the letter of the law to say, what do we really mean by that? And, you look at legislative intent, in this case, voter intent, and to make sure that voters, you look at the ballot packet to see what did the voters think they were voting for. So to me, it comes down to looking at the language and just recognizing what we think the voters did, such that we can, as a board, say, yes, that is in alignment with what the expectations are, and noted and holding accountable those who are implementing the dollars so that we know that they're being properly applied.
Thank you.
Thank you. Student Board Member Yee.
Thank you. As I see it, students are the #1 stakeholders in regards to public education. How would you ensure that the students' interests are included in your decisions as a board member?
I think, well, it can, and we're talking about a broad range of age of students. So I know from your level, it's the older students who have more autonomy. So I'll speak to that. I think social media is probably one of the best ways we can do that. And I would really like to see this district be much more technologically savvy, and to make sure that we have technology at all levels of education, whether it's in the classroom but also at the district level, to make sure that things are information is flowing much more easily than it currently does. I mentioned earlier setting up a Facebook fan page for Area 1, so people could interact and post things, or and there could be opportunities for commenting on things. I think that's probably one of the best ways we can end up interacting with youth. Sending a flyer home with the parent really kind of doesn't cut it these days. So,
what is your view on student voice and the value of student interests?
Oh, well, as you said, we're here for the kids. The whole point of this board and of the district is to foster human development and letting students become ready for the world. So students need to have a voice in how that happens.
And lastly, how would you represent yourself as a youth advocate?
As a what? As a youth advocate?
Advocate.
How would I represent myself? You mean by what means, or I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
How would you represent the youth?
Okay, so I guess it flows from what I was saying before, in terms of just being responsive to understanding what the needs are and what the issues are that have been brought to me, and bringing those issues to business partners, other community entities that we have that are serving the same population, to understand what those needs are and conveying those needs to other community leaders and folks so that we're all working together and we're all on the same page.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our questioning from the board members. At this point, you have now 2 minutes for your closing comments. And again, your 2 minutes will begin with your first word.
Okay. You've heard my vision for the district, you've read my application, and you've heard my answers to your questions. Let me close by highlighting why I'm the right person to fill this position. One, I'm an active listener. If you appoint me to this position, I will take the time to listen to not only my constituents, but also my fellow board members. I want to understand the issues and the positions and the implications of a decision before coming to conclusions. I'm a critical thinker. I will challenge underlying assumptions and ask why or why not. 3, I've spent my entire professional career as a problem solver. As a deputy legislative counsel, my job was to understand the problem that a legislator identified and then draft language that would accomplish the stated intent. This often meant analyzing the situation, evaluating consequences, and making suggestions for how to solve the problem. As a visiting clinical professor at my alma mater, USC Law School, I guided my students through the process of analyzing legal problems in order to reach appropriate solutions for our real-life clients. As chief counsel and principal consultant, I advised the Senate Majority Leader on budget and policy issues. In order to give sound advice, I sought input from many different stakeholders so that I could competently understand their concerns and come to a thoughtful solution. Currently, as a business efficiency consultant, I ask what's working and what's not, identify the interested parties, and develop a plan that helps optimize resources, ensures that results match their mission, and enhances employee and customer loyalty. 4, I currently serve on the school site council of my children's school. So I understand, to the degree anybody can, the impact that district budget has on schools. 5, I have volunteered in the school district since before I had children. It's been an important part of my community involvement. 6, as my resume indicates, I've served on numerous boards over the past 20 years, several in leadership positions. This shows the trust that my fellow board members have had in my ability to guide them through important decision-making processes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bird. At this point, I would like to ask the board to indulge us in taking a brief recess so that we can consult with our legal counsel. Thank you. got your light on again? We got public comment. We have public comment. We do? Ready. Okay, I call this meeting back to order. Thank you very much. With that, we do have public comment, and thank you, Mr. Behrens.
So Mr. Tony Chen, followed by Mr. Michael Russell.
You're gone?
I guess that eliminates public comment from these two individuals.
Wonderful. All right. Vice President Wu.
Madam President, thank you. We began item 4, which was next steps for appointment process. And then we moved and then decided that we would move forward with the interview of the applicants. We didn't really complete item 4 regarding next steps for the appointment process, so I beg your indulgence and my colleagues if we could bring item 4 back.
Second. Well, we have a motion and a second, though I'm not sure if it's really required at this point. So let's just say that the board is supportive of going into item 4.0, next steps for appointment process. It is a conference action item, and there is it's slotted for 5-minute discussion, not that we have to take all 5 minutes or only strictly stick to the 5-minute discussion. We are bored. And we have Member Kennedy.
Are we talking about, because we had left it vague as whether we would whittle it down or go forward? Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I speak simple. My recommendation would be to the board, I think that what we had this evening was 6 incredibly strong candidates. I thought that coming in, you've made it even harder now. And I personally would make the recommendation that we spend the next 13 days germinating on all 6 of them and not whittle down at this point and come back on the 20th and deal with it at that point in its finality.
Are there any other recommendations, discussions, questions? Okay. I would like to review the next steps that is allowable, and that item 5.0, which is listed in our summary, does allow for some discussion, which is now 4.0. It's intended to reserve the time, which may not be needed, to allow board, if it desires to discuss next steps, and in making a decision to appoint a board member at Trustee Area 1 meeting. At that point, we could bring forward candidates to ask additional questions on the 20th. So I would like to just alert board members that if they so choose on the 20th, we can bring back all 6 applicants, and then have additional question and answer time at that point. It would be very limited at that point, since we have had an opportunity. This would just be for clarifying questions. So if that's agreeable, we could do that and make a motion, make a motion and make an action on that to allow for us to agendize it.
Yes, the board agenda item for the 20th would be an action item to appoint a provisional board member. At that time, you can ask additional questions of the prospective candidates, but that would be the only item on the agenda for December 20th, unless you instruct staff otherwise.
Thank you. We have Member Arroyo.
Question. So just for full clarity, so we go through the process, we ask further questions, we have a debate amongst ourselves, we finally vote on one of the 6 candidates. That person will be seated right thereafter?
Yes, they would be
Office-
would be sworn at that point. They would assume office at that point.
Okay.
Point of clarification, Council. Yeah, I believe that the Member Ellen Bell's resignation
True.
called for.
3 days would elapse, and then they would take they would officially assume office. You're correct.
So they couldn't sit that night, they'd have to wait till the 23rd?
Right.
Okay.
They would not sit that night. There's a 3-day gap. You're right.
So they won't, okay. So
it
no
would
Christmas
be-
present for them. They don't have to wait to January till we have a meeting.
Well, true, but they would be effective
Okay, good.
following her resignation, which I believe is December 23rd.
Would be
So they could be sworn in on the 20th, and they assume office as soon as her resignation.
A good Christmas
Turns
present
out.
for one of the 6, I guess.
So on the
Now-
23rd, they get the fancy license plates and all
Exactly.
that stuff.
Bathroom key.
One point, though,
Kennedy.
is that you had said that that would be the only thing on the agenda?
Well, the only thing as far as this
Okay.
process.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, it's not the only thing on the agenda, but as far as this process, it would be an action item to appoint a provisional board member, and would be sworn at that point. And as you pointed out, they would assume office as soon as Board Member Bell's resignation clocks off.
One more procedural question.
Member of Royal.
So in this conference to action, the conference is to move to have another meeting on the 20th, and then the action here is for the motion to move that item, or the action is to actually appoint? So we will be
Today.
voting on conference right now and leave it the action item for appointment. Is that?
Well, you're,
No, it was, go ahead,
you've
Counsel.
already voted to appoint a member. It was the process that you basically gave direction on. And now the issue was, what else do you want to do besides make the appointment on the 20th? But as a part of the appointment, you can ask additional questions
Okay.
of the prospective candidates.
And the
That would be the last time you could make a decision to act. Otherwise, if you don't, the county superintendent of schools will order an election.
One more thing I would like to ask the board is, do we want to limit the number of questions each board member is allowed to ask the applicants in the 20th? 1 to 2 questions? I mean, I can't imagine that we would allow unlimited questions from board members, as it may extend our meeting. Vice President Cunha.
I think I would just not come to any certain conclusion right now and have that discussion that day. If people show up and have clarifying questions, we can try to have that discussion about how many will be allowed when we get here. I don't know if I'll have any or not. I doubt I will.
You would agree with that? Okay, so we will take the issue up on December 20th. There is no action needed on this item. We left it open as a conference action item in the event that we needed action. So are there any other questions, procedural clarifications, or anything like that at this time? Seeing none, we have I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Student Board Member Yee motions to adjourn, and we have Vice President Cunha, who is seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And abstentions? The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.